Uzbekistan's acting president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, has offered some important insight into his economic policies. Mirziyoyev will likely change some of Islam Karimov's policies, especially in the economic sphere. Soon after his appointment, Mr. Mirziyoyev outlined 6 priority areas for dealing with economic challenges. These are macroeconomic stability and the need to keep GDP growth figures from declining further, prioritizing local processing of rare and precious metals, as well as food and chemical industries, export-oriented production, support of small and medium-sized businesses, job creation and the prevention of inequality, national transportation infrastructure, and information and communication systems. Needless to say that most of the items in the above list of economic priorities were repeatedly stated in late President Islam Karimov's numerous rich speeches and publications. However, there are a few reasons to believe that Uzbekistan, that the new leadership in Uzbekistan is serious about addressing some of the apparent pressure points. David, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you some numbers.
That's okay.
But today, Uzbekistan is facing a series of socio-economic challenges due to the decrease of primarily remittances from Russia and other countries, low global energy prices, and falling standard of living. GDP growth has been consistently declining since 2010. Officially, the unemployment rate was reported at 5.2% in 2015, which is comparable to the US rate. However, according to some unofficial estimates, between 30 and 40% of Uzbeks may be unemployed. With 2.5 children per woman, Uzbekistan's birth rate is among the highest in the world. The country has experienced a 70% increase in the size of the able-bodied population since independence. Almost 60% of Uzbekistan's population today is younger than 30. So, under the macroeconomic, I'm not going to discuss all the items from the list of economic priorities. I just wanted to mention some of the most important of them. Under the macroeconomic stability, as outlined in Mirziyoyev's list, the government stated its willingness to address national currency convertibility, stabilization. But no details were given regarding the prospects for the full convertibility of the national currency, the sum. The black market exchange rate has reached 7,000 soon to the dollar, while the official exchange rate was administratively set at 3,084 sums to the dollar. A few privileged companies protected by high-ranking officials have access to such artificial rates and benefit enormously from this situation. It remains to be seen if Mirziyoyev would be willing to go against his entrenched interest and equalize the exchange rates. This would most likely require some bold financial steps, including but not limited to currency devaluation. And also, this will serve as an important test of how far the new leadership will be willing to go against those entrenched interests. Export-oriented production is another important priority. In fact, the declared goal is quite a departure, in my opinion, from late Karimov's economic isolationism and the promotion of import substitution policies. prioritizing export orientation of the economic activity may potentially lead to the transformation of Uzbekistan's entire economic model of development. Today, more than 20% of the industrial output in Uzbekistan is produced as part of import substitution programs, and is highly protected from outside competition. As far as the support for small and medium-sized businesses is concerned, the new leadership is taking some very positive, in my opinion, and important steps designed to ease restrictions and rid businesses of the massive burden of inspections of private businesses. For example, some of the so-called unscheduled and even scheduled inspections will be limited in the number. A service of the so-called business ombudsman will be created as part of the parliament. And Uzbekistan's legal and penal systems will be revised to ease punishment for business-related offenses, especially in relation to first-time offenses. Uzbekistan desperately needs reforms, and they are, to some extent, unavoidable. The new leadership will likely prioritize the economic development over all other pressing issues. And in the dealing with the economic and social issues, its dealings with the economic and social issues will provide us important clues as to what direction the political transformation is going to take place, is going to move to, if such transformation will ever take place. In the foreseeable future, the stability of the system in Uzbekistan will largely depend on the consensus of the elites and their ability to manage socioeconomic risks. I'm going to briefly discuss relations with Russia and China. This was already covered in the earlier session, but I'm going to give you some numbers probably. So, Uzbekistan is both one of Russia's major trading partners and the largest supplier of cheap labor. In 2013, Uzbek migrants sent home an amount as high as 12% of Uzbekistan's GDP. Yet in 2015, 2 years later, the remittances decreased sharply, falling to around 5% of the GDP. According to estimates by the Russian Central Bank, remittances from Russia to Uzbekistan totaled a little over $3 billion in 2015, which is almost a 50% decrease since 2013, right before the Russian involvement in the conflict in Ukraine and the following Western sanctions. Also, according to Russia's Federal Migration Service, there were 1.75 million Uzbek labor migrants at the beginning of this year. However, it should be noted that this number mostly includes legally registered migrants and those who were able to obtain very costly work permits to work in Russia. The actual number can be as high as 3 million or even more, which is roughly 10% of the population of Uzbekistan and 2% of the population of Russia. As recently as 2014, Russia was still the largest exporter to Uzbekistan, accounting for a quarter of the country's imports. But the following year, it became the second largest, falling behind China. Uzbek exports to Russia have also been decreasing lately. Cotton and textiles still represent the bulk of the Uzbek goods that Russia imports. President Vladimir Putin was recently quoted as saying that Russia has invested over $6 billion in Uzbekistan in recent years, primarily in the oil and gas industry. Russian Gazprom and Lukoil operate several large-scale projects in Uzbekistan. Central Asia's economic dependency provides Russia with significant leverage when negotiating all sorts of agreements, ranging from the military basing rights, labor migration, and trade negotiations. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that Uzbekistan will seek to join any Russian-dominated integration processes, particularly the Eurasian Economic Union. On the surface, given the restrictions imposed on labor migrants by the member states of the EU, it looks like it should be an attractive option for Uzbekistan. However, the EU membership also means that Uzbekistan would have to liberalize its currency regime and also deal with its protective customs regime. Given the entrenched interests, we're not clear if Uzbekistan, if the new leadership in Uzbekistan will go that far. Joining the CSTO is out of question for me. I think for now, it will be joining the same organization for the third time. There's also a little chance Tashkent would Tashkent will probably opt for continuing its bilateral relations with all countries involved. As you have probably noticed, Mirziyoyev did not attend the recent CIS summit in Bishkek. It remains to be seen if this was a serious message or if this was just out of fear of, say, losing his job in Uzbekistan in his absence in this sensitive time. As far as the Chinese involvement in Uzbekistan, in 2015, trade turnover between China and Uzbekistan was estimated at 3.5 billion, and China has since become the largest source of foreign direct investment in Uzbekistan. Right before Islam Karimov's death, the two countries upgraded the status of their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. A few days ago, First Deputy Prime Minister Rustam Azimov was in China, and he was quoted by the Chinese press as regarding China, Uzbekistan's diplomatic priority. My overall prognosis is that to the extent possible, Tashkent will pursue relations with both Moscow and Beijing without seriously linking itself to either side.